sitting here in the emergency room of Hadassah and Karim Hospital at 4:45 in the morning, Wednesday morning, uh, beginning of El, and it's the second night in the row being in an emergency room without sleep. So this inspired me to go a little bit into this sugya of sleep, and what is sleep all about, and understanding a little bit what happens when we go to sleep and what happens when we wake up. Most people, when they wake up, they feel pretty groggy. They feel pretty. Feel like maybe they just died. And there's something to that, as we're going to see. Why does a person feel like that? What's that all about? That's one question. Another question here is a few meters away from me. There's a Coca-Cola machine, and Coca-Cola claims to have the taste of life, but obviously there's absolutely no backing to this claim that Coca-Cola has a taste of life. But what does really life taste like, and what does death taste like, for that matter? Another question I'd like to clarify here today is that Chazal tells us an incredible thing. The Yaakov Avinu, for 14 years, he was in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. He didn't lo shalchav. He wasn't sleeping. So the Gemara says that if a person makes an oath not to sleep for 3 days, you give him malchus because it's not possible not to sleep for 3 days, which will be tomorrow for me. So what is the going on here with Yaakov Avinu? He didn't sleep for 14 years. And so too we could ask by David Melech. He said, David Melech, Chai v'kayam. David Melech is Chai v'kayam. How could that be? How could he live forever? No one lives forever. Right? Another question I'd like to discuss here today is about Chatzos Halayla, right? David Melech never slept after Chatzos. Gemara tells us that for the first half of the night he was misnam named Kasus. And what does that mean to be misnam named Kasus? To be like nodding off like a horse, right? What does that mean? And why didn't he sleep? Why did he do that? Why didn't he go lie in bed? It's not healthy, seemingly, to stand up and sleep. So why did he do this? Okay. All these questions I'd like to answer, and all essentially traces back to Adam Rishon. Adam Rishon, when he was created, he was connected to the Eitz Chaim, right? He was Mishtayach, he was connected to the Eitz Chaim. And had he eaten from the Eitz Chaim first, had he eaten from the tree of life, before eating from the Eitz Das Tovara, so things would have been very different. But unfortunately, Adam Rishon chose, right, to eat from the Eitz Das Tovara, and as the Leshem explains, he did not have so much Bechira. It was so clear to him that if he ate from the Eitz Hadas, that he would be able to reach such higher madregas, such higher levels of spiritual perfection, that almost he had no free choice, right? The Leshem asserts that even Hashem wanted him, in fact, to eat from the Eitz Hadas, so the whole history of Klal Yisrael and everything else that transpired would take place. So this is what happened. And after eating from the Eitz Das Tovara, instead of being connected to the tree of life, Adam Rishon was more connected to the tree of death. And when does that connection take place? That connection takes place when a person goes to sleep. When a person goes to sleep, his neshama leaves his body. Your neshama leaves your body, and he has a death-like experience. The neshama is the neshama's place of resting is in the mind, and that's why when you're awake, you could think and you could learn Torah and you could understand things, right? When you go to sleep, then you become like a shota. You don't understand anything. You lose all your understanding. So the idea of sleeping is that you lose your mind and your understanding and your ability to learn Torah and to daven. So sleep is 1/60 of death. When a person fights sleep from their eyes, they're in essence fighting off death. Now the Kadmonim, the Kubalim tell us there's a difference between a person sleeps lying down and standing up, right? When Chazal tell us that Yaakov Avinu didn't sleep for 14 years, actually it doesn't say he didn't sleep, it was lo shachav. He didn't lie down. he was sitting up and dozing off, like David HaMelech also, for the first half of the night, he was sitting up and dozing off. But that's not real sleep. That sleep, it seems, doesn't connect a person to death so much. The sleep which connects a person to death is when he lies down, he's in a death-like position, like a coffin. That sleep connects a person to death, right? And Yaakov didn't lie down and have that type of sleep for 14 years. Only when he left the yeshiva of Shem Be'aver had that type of sleep. So too David HaMelech, as the Gemara in Brachos, beginning of Brachos, Gimel on the base, says that for the first half of the night, which is the time of din, so David HaMelech was misnamnim kasus, a sus sleeps, a horse sleeps standing up, and only after that he was successfully fought off death, and he continued the rest of the night studying Torah and saying shirs and tishbachos, right? Why was it that David HaMelech per se had to do this? So interesting thing, we find that David HaMelech, he was supposed to die at birth. He was given 70 years of life as a gift, and it seems that since his life was a gift, it was more vulnerable. He had to very, very carefully not to touch death. So therefore, he could never sleep. Chazal tells he never slept for more than 60 breaths. 60 breaths, more than 60 breaths of sleep, which is a question, is that 3 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Is it 3 hours? So when a person sleeps that much time, he's tasted death. Less than that time is not tasting death. That's why the Vilna Gaon at the end of his life, he never slept for more than half an hour. He slept 4 intervals of half an hour, right? And this is how some great tzaddikim are knowing. Now, it seems like there's a big difference between Chatzos and other times of the night. At Chatzos is a very critical point. It's probably the most critical point of the entire day. The first half of the night is din, 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 judgment, judgment, judgment. Right? We get to Chatzos, the judgment reaches its peak, and then takes a turn from judgment to kindness, from din to chesed. So it's a very critical part of the day. And it seems like if you're sleeping at that point, it's very, very dangerous. That's when the near-death experience, the death-like experience takes place. And it's for that reason, in fact, that Chatzos is so connected to death. At the end of Pesach Seder, we talk about a lot of things that happen at Chatzos Halayla, most notably Makas Bechoros. All the Bechoros died at Chatzos Halayla, because that's the point of the day which is most connected to death. And that's when a person tastes the taste of death. Sleeping at the time of Chatzos is tasting the taste of death. In fact, the Avnei Nezer asserted that the main thing of not eating after Chatzos was to have the time of the matzah in your mouth. Right? And the time of matzah is the taste of life. The taste of life, time of matzah, Torah, shiros and tishbachos. All of these things are the taste of life. This is what we're meant to have in our mouth at Chatzos, if possible. If possible. Of course, not everyone is capable in their schedule of not sleeping at Chatzos and still being able to function the next day. It's more important to function the next day than to be up at during Chatzos, but great tzaddikim have tried their hardest to be up during Chatzos, to say shiros and tishbachos, to say tikkun rachel, tikkun leah, tikkun Chatzos, or to be learning Torah, in order that they shouldn't taste death. And this is the idea. There's a tremendous tumah that takes place, the tumah of connection to the tree of death, and we could fight off that tumah and chatzos by being connected to Torah, which has an incredible power to break that tumah, or be connected to tefillah, to tikkun chatzos, and or other ways of fighting off death, being connected to spirituality. So as I continue my streak here of 2 days more or less without sleep, although I did manage to hop a few minutes here and a few minutes there, like a little bit like a horse, like a sus. Like for 2 days I got to be like David HaMelech. And that's why, in fact, even though being 2 days in an emergency room, the first day in Shaarei Tzedek and the second day in Hadassah and Kerem, I hope the third day will not be in another emergency room, because we had to do everything start from scratch again. But this was the directives given by our doctor, right? Even though it's not the most pleasant experience in the world, but did give me a chance to fight off the taste of death. I didn't drink any Coca-Cola while I was here, which is, they claim to be the Tam Chaim. My mother-in-law, Zechar Lebracha, used to say it's really the time of death, right? As we know that they put some Coca-Cola in a ship for a few days and it disintegrated the ship. My mother-in-law said it's great for cleaning toilets. It gets off all of the dirt on the toilets. That's a very caustic thing. So that's not really the taste of life. The taste of life really is Torah study and tefillah, Torah and tefillah. And the best time to taste that taste of life and to fight off death is during Chatzos. So whatever we can do to be awake during Chatzos, if possible, and to be learning Torah, or to be saying davening, Tikkun Chatzos, or whatever other tefillahs. Rabbi Yaakov Hill told me once that Slichos is also good. Slichos and Kinos, those things are also good, and that's why the people are really makbid in Slichos, the Sephardim now and the Ashkenazim, a week before Rosh Hashanah, they try to say it. The best way to say it um, is before Nates in the morning, preferably even before Alos HaShachar, because right before Alos HaShachar is the time for ultimate chesed of the day. It's when it's the darkest type of the day, darkest time of the day, but the darkness is turning into light. It's the time of transition from the greatest darkness into the greatest light, and that's why it's a very, very musugal time to be saying slichos. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us siyata d'shmaya to taste the taste of life, which is the taste of Torah and the taste of tefillah, to taste it during Chatzos, Alayla, when the tumah is so strong, we're connected to the tree of life, to be as much as possible involved with Torah and tefillah without interrupting our schedule and feeling like zombies the whole day. And in the merit of this great siyata d'shmaya, we should have everyone who needs a refuah shalema, b'toch shar chol Yisrael, including Nomi Bracha Basara. Everyone should have a refuah shalema, refuah nefesh refuah shaguf, hashta bagel havasman kriv, and Omar Amen. Kain T.A. Ratzon.